I give a fuck? Why do I give a fuck? Why do I try so hard? Why do I care so much?
Welcome to Why Do I Give a Fuck? A cross-cultural conversation between myself, Deanne Tate,
and Johanna Thompson. In these times of great struggle and possible shift, we ask ourselves,
why do we give a fuck about any of it? How does the lens we see the world through impact what we see?
And what do we do about it? Welcome, welcome. Why do we care about any of it?
You know what? I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
Not even sure. But you know what? I try not to care. I really try. Like yesterday, I was like, I'm taking the day off. I'm not going to think about the world falling apart. I'm not going to. And about halfway through, I felt so guilty for not doing anything, for being still and not having, not learning something, not reading something, So I try not to give a fuck about it, but it doesn't work very long for me. I get kind of wrapped up. I don't know if that happens for you or not.
Well, I don't ever feel a moments of guilt when I take time. Never. Never. I don't. And I'm curious about like what the balance of taking time looks like. But I have been blessed since I haven't been on the islands, and I'm planning to go back to the island tomorrow. I'm not as excited about going back to the island in the way that I've always been like, oh, I've been on the U.S. territory too long, let me go back. And the reason is because everybody knows that Melissa has come and devastated my beautiful little island, and the devastation is going to continue on for an indefinite amount of time right now, because we know that there is the western side of the island that is completely wiped out. People are still trying to figure out what their housing situation is going to be. There's still food coming in. There's still some of the larger philanthropic and support service organizations that are going through the island to kind of survey the land and see what the needs are. I know that there's emergency workers that are being kept at some of the resorts that are still available to house people, but most of those are still closed to the general public and being utilized for emergency workers to help clear the roads and figure out what the infrastructure is to move water. Still dealing with like tropical rainstorms happening. So getting cleanup in one way and then having to redo exactly what you've just cleaned up. My home in particular being inhabitable for me because water keeps coming in. I still don't have electricity. I still don't have general water from the water infrastructure in Jamaica. And I'm in a neighborhood that is relatively privileged with the expectation that when these things go out, that they come back quickly. This is not to say the communities that are further up in the hills or deeper in the mountains or more west towards Westmoreland and St. Elizabeth, those communities don't even have an idea of when there will be opportunity for them to be up and running. And then there's still communities of people that haven't had any access yet because there's just no way to get to those communities of people. So there's a lot going on for me. Lots that I care about. It's really like self-centered in this moment, self-centered in a way that I'm also thinking about like what it is that we can do to continue to support and to uplift and not forget that there's this traumatic event that is happening on this beautiful island that so many people have benefited from in some way, shape, or form. And so that's what I'm thinking about, caring about, and preparing to get back on this island tomorrow, bring some more generators, figure out how to coordinate bigger generators over. We heard about Buju Banton, who had an entire aircraft that went into Kingston, and the old pirate spirit I'm laughing because I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing just because like the pirate spirit of whatever happened there and all of the equipment that was taken, the emergency care equipment that was really stationed and being directed towards St. Elizabeth, all of that stuff disappeared.
I hadn't heard about this. So can you give just a little bit of a synopsis of what happened?
Yeah, big deal. Buju Banton did a whole media ploy letting people know how much need was needed in Jamaica. He filled an entire airplane full of security supplies got to the Kingston Norman Manley Airport, and it was emptied by the time. Yeah, man. By the
Empty
time that,
by like
yeah,
crowds of
air,
people or
airport personnel, no, because it came into
oh
the airport,
goodness.
but somehow with government, there's not clarity on
Yeah.
how things disappeared, but things did disappear, and there was some mockery around it. I don't really get into like all of the he say, she say. We just know that, equipment came into port, equipment was not received in the way, and it did not get to the community of people that needed it. And a lot of support. There's questions about a lot of support with like kind of those big organizations coming in to do care. So I really am offering, if you've been on the island of Jamaica, it's probably that you have somebody's number that you connected with when you were here. And I would offer to anyone to directly contact those people and ask them what their needs are. And if there's an opportunity for you to help directly to someone, sending a cash app, or that's what mostly people use on the island.
Okay.
Sometimes
So
through
Cash
PayPal,
App is the preferred. Okay.
Cash App, PayPal. Those
That's
are the
good to
types
know.
of supports, direct relationship supports, because, when there's a big disaster and there's a lot of supports from major industries pouring in, most of the time, the people that actually need the support and the help, it's taking a long time to get to them. I know the community of folks that I know that are business owners, most of them have ordered their own containers of supplies to come in to help support their employees, to help actually rebuild those houses so that people can get back in the
Yeah,
homes.
you mentioned that before. I thought that was such a
Mhm.
what a great way to support your employees for
Yeah, I mean
sure.
that's culture and community, and a lot of the
Mhm.
employees are
Mhm.
are a cultural family, like not so
Right.
much like blood family, but
Right.
cultural family
The
with one
family you
another.
choose. Yeah.
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 And so, folks are coming together in that level of mutual aid that we were talking about in one of our episodes to
Right.
really support and get people back on their feet so that we can start with the economy. Now, as far as the clubs and the partying, Montego Bay is going to make sure that it has some type of a resource to get people to,
Yeah.
desire to come back to the island. And
Right.
so
Right.
I know that a lot of those businesses are up and running and trying to get things going. So
Right, and I would imagine based on capitalism, right, and based
mm,
on the power that people have, the all-inclusive resorts, the sandals, all of
mhm.
those are probably getting resources to rebuild and restore a lot quicker
Yeah,
than the other communities, and because tourism is key, right, and that's and which I'm
a
not
major component.
I'm not belittling it in terms of the it's a real source of income for the island, but I guess I just get a little well, we talked about this in previous episodes that the money that people spend at these resorts doesn't necessarily stay on the island. It goes into the pockets of people that are
Right.
not on the island, and that's always unfortunate. So and would I be right in saying that like if you know somebody on the island and you wanted to send them like a care package, is the postal service and the way to like send that's is that I would imagine that's been impacted by the storm. Am I
I
right in saying
imagine
that?
so, and I
Yeah.
don't have the information to actually answer that because I
Okay.
haven't sent a package,
Right.
or have anybody send me a package from
Right.
any other country. So I'm not sure what delivery of that looks like, but I can
Yeah.
imagine that if
It's been
you
impacted.
are living in an area that is more remote, then it's going to be
Mhm.
more difficult for that human being to get down to wherever packages
Yeah.
are being held at this point in time
Yeah.
in community and or the kind of organization of that, because so many things are coming into the island. I have heard stories of things, getting lost. I don't know what the customs process is because I'm just coming in on commercial flights. And so
Right.
things are
Right.
coming in with me that I check and then I get them right when I get off the plane and carry them
Mhm.
into
Mhm.
community with me, which is
Yeah.
what for those of us trying to transport things to support on the island, that's the way that we're doing it. That
Right.
just makes sure that you have
Right.
what you need.
Right.
I am hearing, and I am going to try to get this 200-pound generator across the island. And I did get some resources with that. So I am hearing that like the transport and the processing time is going a little bit quicker.
Okay.
than what they usually take time to do with customs and all of the paperwork
Yeah.
and paper
Yeah.
trails, because they know that people have major needs.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, over time, hopefully, as the roads get clearer and, and the infrastructure, but I hear what you're saying about the folks that are so remote. I mean, there may be people up in the hills that
Definitely.
nobody's heard from, that nobody knows what their status is, don't even know that's necessarily where they live, to go try to find them and go try to check on them and make sure that they're okay. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a long recovery
I think that
period.
like
And
the
sorry, you froze for a
Well,
minute. Go
it is
ahead.
definitely a long it's definitely a long recovery period. And I think that some of the impacts of like the climate impacts that happen on an
Hmm.
island
Hmm.
when something so major goes down, like a category 5 hurricane,
Yeah.
really makes it very clear about what climate justice needs to look like, excuse me, as far as infrastructure, for
Hmm.
communication, for processes and plans, and also having the resources to be able to maintain the infrastructure, like clearing the roads, and how the roads are initially built, because the roads can be cleared, but if it's not a very solid cement that is being used to make the road, then
Right.
as soon as it's cleared, the mud and the water is going to wash away whatever the
Take
material
over.
is that has been
Right.
used.
Yeah.
Those are some of the things that we need to be thinking about. In also the climate injustice of the amount of disease that happens when pooled water, when things can't be cleared out properly,
Right.
when
Right.
food can't be stored in the appropriate way. All of those type of injustices, especially on a little island that doesn't have a strong traditional plan of like recycling. It's just not what
Yeah.
happens in the way that it happens in the United States, to be able to repurpose things. The
Hmm.
repurposing of like raw materials, I think that people are really ingenious with in rebuilding things.
And
Uh,
zinc. We learned about zinc last time. We know what zinc is now.
um,
Yeah. Yes.
folks are really ingenious with like the way that they can see what their resources are and make
Hmm.
something out of nothing, for sure. 100%, there's no
Yeah.
question about that. But then just like the actual infrastructure that needs to be put in place by the government in a way that really looks at how are we rebuilding with some climate justice, and thinking about the environmental impacts that
Right.
will put Jamaica in a safer place in the communities of people that are most affected at this point in time.
Yeah, you were talking about things getting washed away and water pooling and things, and it made me think of Gaza, because right now
Mhm.
the rains have started. The rainy season is happening in full force in Gaza, in Palestine, and the videos that are coming out of that area, and the people that I'm connected with on the ground in Gaza are letting me know how it's impacting them, and the rivers of water that are coming through people's tents. Children are waking
Mm.
up, surrounded by water, and you were just talking about the infrastructure being impacted by a catastrophe, and therefore it doesn't work the way it should have worked. Well, in Gaza, of course, everything is gone. So there is no infrastructure anymore. And so that rainwater is all mixed with sewage, and it's mixed with trash, and it's mixed with, unfortunately, remains of folks that are still caught in the rubble. And so, as you were talking about disease spreading and that kind of thing, yeah, it's a real, it's, it goes beyond
We
anything
can't
that
imagine.
right. You can't, especially if you've grown up in the U.S. territory or in any country that, when we have, when the U.S. has, I'll speak through the U.S. because that's my lens. When we have catastrophes that happen here, we have emergency service teams, and we have rapid response, and we have FEMA, such as it is, and we have governmental structures that are in place that can possibly come in.
Well, no, but to your point, on U.S. and more developed up places that have more resources, you have all of these things. You have road. I'm thinking this, like the basic. You
Yeah.
have roads in Gaza and Palestine right now, there's
No
no
roads.
roads.
Yeah.
There's no roads in
They have no
Jamaica.
roads. They have
Other
no
places that are
structures.
having, like, that makes it so much more difficult
Yeah.
when you don't have, like, we can't conceive of what it means to not have a road
Yeah.
to get to the place that you need to offer help and support.
Yeah.
Like, it has to, like, you have to drive a little, stop, get out your car, cut down something, move it out the way, while
Yeah.
other cars are like, make different pathways that also then could, as soon as water hits or any type of shift or any type of moisture or whatever the case may be,
Right.
that thing that you've cleared is completely obstructed again.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really inconceivable when you are experiencing or are part of and impacted by like a major environmental disaster.
Right.
It's real in ways that's incomprehensible until you experience it.
Yeah. And I know we have a lot of listeners from all over the world, which is very exciting. Hello, everybody. So everybody's got a different experience about, you know, what how their country and how their infrastructure is set up and how it functions. And I think these are all super important things to think about when we think about climate and we think about, I know that climate change, you know, haven't we like gone through this metamorphosis of language? You know, I remember back in the day when it used to be called global warming, and then they changed it because people didn't understand, well, it's cold. What are you talking about global warming? It must be a hoax, you know? And so they changed it to climate change. And I've also heard climate catastrophe, which I think is appropriate in a lot of ways. But you and I were chatting a little before we came on air about the COP 2025 climate summit, which is happening in Brazil right now. And I was just listening to Democracy Now! On YouTube before we got on here, and they were reporting from Brazil, which they called the lungs of the planet. And it was interesting because you were like, I'm curious about that. What does that mean? You know, and I don't know all of the ins and outs, but generally speaking, I have heard that phrase before. And it really is relating to the Amazon rainforest that is in Brazil and in other areas around there, that forestry operates as the lungs of our planet. So for those of you who may have skipped science or, you know, didn't get the science, as we know in the US, most people aren't getting the schooling they need to get, but trees and plants create oxygen. They clean our air. They take carbon monoxide, which is what we expel when we breathe out, what our cars expel, what our machines expel. And they take that carbon monoxide, that's kind of their oxygen. So they breathe in that carbon monoxide, these trees, and then they breathe out oxygen. So if we don't have these trees, we don't have oxygen. And so that's why the Amazon rainforest is called the lungs of our planet, because it is such a deeply concentrated section of land that has such a highly concentrated set of trees that causes that restoration of our oxygen and taking the carbon monoxide out of our air and creating oxygen so that we can continue to breathe. And so I think it's beautiful that they're having the summit right there, because that is an area that is on the front lines, if you will, of our climate catastrophe, and one of the ways that we can try to mitigate that. But also, too, what I thought was interesting was this is the first time in 3 years, I believe, that they've held this climate summit in a country that allows for civil protest. So I think the past 3 years, it's been held in countries like the UAE and other countries that tamp all of that down, that say, no, you can't protest. And so they have this lovely climate summit in an area where nobody is talking really about. I mean, they're talking about it, but it's very surface level. You know, they're not talking about the impact and the impact that their country necessarily might be having on the destruction of the speeding up of our climate catastrophe. And so what I've been seeing in the news is the amount of indigenous tribes and groups of indigenous people that are showing up at this climate summit and protesting and demonstrating, because they are the voice of our earth. If the Amazon rainforest is the lungs, then I feel like the indigenous peoples of certainly Brazil, but also other areas of the world, is the voice and the soul of our planet. So if you haven't checked that out, you can just do your searches. I'm not going to say the G word because I'm trying to get away from that, but do your searches for COP 2025. And the COP might be a little off-putting because we're all ACAB all day long around here. But COP, I think, stands for Climate Organizing of Peoples. I think that's what it stands for. But it's a coming together. It's an anagram that's supposed to talk about the coming together of people to talk about the climate. So that's happening in Brazil. So that's something I think we should all give AF about if we're not aware. And, just a reminder, if you're listening to only mainstream media and they're not talking about COP 2025, there's a reason for that. So you need to find your information elsewhere. And there are lots of resources to do that. So I encourage everybody to go find something other than your MSNBCs, NBCs, ABCs, CNNs, or Fox to try to actually find out what's happening in the world. Because most of them are talking about the Epstein files, except Fox. Fox was talking about Taco Bell not being allowed in somewhere. So
it's so funny, even getting over here, I haven't even turned on the news to hear like what the news is talking about.
Well, you don't watch the news when you've talked about that you don't watch the news when you're in Jamaica.
I don't watch
it's
the news,
interesting. It's almost like you've withdrawn yourself from that need to be connected all the time.
Yeah, because I'm much more connected to like what I can see and feel. That's like much more real for me. Like I have to like take it in small steps because it seems so overwhelming when you're looking at like all of the things that are happening in the world, and especially when you're some person that's like a empath. I don't know, like it becomes such a heavy component of like my The reason why I haven't thought about putting on the news in the US just because I haven't thought about putting on the news because I'm thinking about like how to organize my life.
Yeah.
And in Jamaica, I don't have access to public news sources, like any type of TV or that comes in. It's like Netflix and all of that. So I'm not just getting like the general public news sources. What is on my algorithm now is really kind of following what's going on as far as the cleanup after the hurricane and what's going on in communities and things like that, where resources are going. So I am taking account of all of those things through the news sources. I just never trust them as much as I trust the people that I hear that have driven out to the area and have a different communication about what is going on in those areas than what we hear on the news. So
yeah, I mean, I weaned myself off. Gosh, it's probably been close to a year now since I really watched. I actually turned on MSNBC the other day. I don't remember why. Oh, it was because they finally swore in the one representative, and I don't remember her name. She was taking over. She got elected in a special election because her father was in that position and he passed away. So but Johnson, Speaker Johnson, has refused to allow her to be sworn in because she was going to be the 218th vote to release the Epstein files. So they've been putting her off to be sworn in for 2 months. And I don't know, maybe Thursday or Friday of last week, probably Friday, because they do everything on a Friday because nobody's paying attention. They finally swore her in. She signed the affidavit to get the Epstein files released. And so, or not affidavit, but she signed whatever she needed to sign and voted for whatever she needed voted for to get the Epstein files released. And so that's been the conversation a lot these past weekend. So I think I turned it on Friday for just a minute to see like what they were talking about and just to see, but it struck me as odd. First of all, that MSNBC is now MS Now. They've totally changed their name. The network has changed its name. I don't know if that's because they're separating from NBC or they're just trying to deflect. I don't know.
Or trying to rebrand themselves because
they're definitely rebranding, but I don't know what the impetus is, I guess is my point. So I know CBS is owned by somebody who's who's fired all of anybody that's non-white as an anchor or a reporter has gotten fired from CBS. And I don't know if NBC is doing the same thing and that's why MSNBC is changing or rebranding. Don't know. But
Mhm.
so that
So
was kind of, yeah.
what I'm hearing, what I'm hearing, the observation is that not only rebranding, but you're seeing a shifting on who's going to be representing and reporting the news.
Yeah. I know on CBS, that was a big thing about a month ago, that the woman that's running CBS now is a known Trump supporter, Project 2025 supporter, all right, Christian nationalist, whatever. And she has intentionally and very vocally, with not trying to hide it, been firing summarily anybody that is non-white and doesn't follow her necessarily her Christian values. And so this is definitely, you'd see a siphoning off of any voices that might be remotely different than a Christian nationalist, America first kind of mindset, conservative mindset. So it's not even conservative, I think, anymore. It's really just cult-like. But so yeah, it was interesting, and that was when I heard about them rebranding to MS Now instead of MSNBC, which I think is like, okay, so you changed the name, and what does that mean? So, but yeah, it's,
as you think all of these type of like changes take place, like what are your thoughts about like representation, or what are your thoughts about like as they're seeing these shifts happen?
well, I mean, because I don't watch all of that stuff myself, I know a lot of people still do. And so I do have concern, obviously, about the furtherization of the Fox effect, is what I'm calling it. I just coined that. So if anybody wants to use it, but I think we all know when we talk about Fox News, we know what we're getting. It's not really news. It's entertainment. It's propaganda. It's all of those things. And what I slowly had to understand was that the other networks were also propaganda, entertainment. I knew there were entertainment, but the propaganda piece has been something new that I'm kind of ingesting and internalizing, realizing in myself. And that's why I've stepped away. So yeah, I worry about the amount of USians who still depend on those mainstream media outlets to learn anything about what's happening, because the more concerted effort, I mean, we're all of them are becoming Fox more and more, in terms of it just being really just a propaganda push, and nothing else. And we're seeing magazines and newspapers doing the same. I mean, New York Times is a perfect example of a paper that used to be well respected, I feel like, and maybe it was just that the narrative had won. Maybe they've always been as slanted and propaganda as they are now, but it's definitely becoming to a point where the news outlets, and I'm using air quotes for those that are listening, really just don't care that they're becoming just propaganda machine, or have
Entertainment.
they're becoming more, they're not trying to hide the fact that propaganda is their main driver, that getting a narrative out that fits whatever it is that the powers that be, the ruling class, are trying to entice people to believe. They just don't care. They don't hide it anymore. They don't actively try to shield us from that knowledge. And so
And it does
yeah.
call into question then, like, where are we getting our information from? What are our news sources going to be? Like, when are we going to, I mean, I know that I feel like there's a greater opportunity for us to connect directly with the people that are impacted. But then when you're connecting with the people that are impacted, it really calls into question a reflection of yourself on what is the level of validation that you're going to give folks that are directly impacted, in being able to communicate what their needs are, because their needs then become kind of like what I'm experiencing right now, very directly like
immediate.
immediate, and they kind of and so it really does call into question, like, some of the major news sources on US territory. Where is it that we're going to turn to access information that is more realistic as to what's going on in the world and how people are being impacted?
I mean, critical thinking, the short answer, and very not thorough enough by any means, but the short answer for me is we have to personally have to develop our critical thinking skills, because it is a skill, and there are skills that we don't aren't cultivated in our educational system, in this country, in the U.S. I'm speaking into U.S. primarily, but I think it can be an issue all around the world, especially in developed nations where, especially if you're living in a nation that has any connection to any kind of empire-esque, imperialism-esque, driven by capitalism-esque governments, that you have to be you have to develop your own abilities to critically think, to listen to what somebody's telling you. Like I've developed certain voices that I listen to based on listening to other voices that know a lot more than I do about things that I'm passionate about and world events. And then, but I'm always listening to them with that filter of, are they driving a narrative? Is this a full story? Are they talking to people, like you said, that are directly impacted? That's a big red flag for me. If you're not talking to anybody that's directly impacted to of what you're speaking into with regard to the story that you're reporting on, then that's a key indicator to me that that person might go as easy to say not trustworthy, and as more deeply to say is pushing a narrative that the powers that be want them to push. So it's not easy anymore.
It's not
Maybe it never
easy.
was easy, but maybe that's a good thing, and that's a good thing, because we need to get better at understanding concepts of propaganda and manufacturing consent. I mean, we're seeing it right now in real time with Venezuela. The Trump administration wants to go to war with Venezuela, and they are creating this war.
Mm-hmm.
They are manufacturing. If you haven't seen Wag the Dog, anybody that's listening that's younger than me, and you don't know the movie Wag the Dog with Dustin Hoffman and Anne Heche, and Robert De Niro's in that too. You need to go watch that movie because it holds up. And I swear that's what's happening right now with Venezuela. They are creating, they are manufacturing consent for a war with Venezuela because they want control of something. And that, any war is really about that. But right now it's happening in Venezuela. It's still happening in Gaza because they're drawing this yellow line through Gaza right now and saying that so that they can expand the settlements. It's all just another version of the land grab. So anyway, don't get me started.
No, we want to get started because these are the conversations that we need to have. And that's some of the things that I want to talk about in regards to news, asking your opinion, but also inviting folks to be thinking about what it means to build a connection. I remember when we were young people in school, there was a thing that we had called pen pals.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it was like you were able to be in connection with somebody from a different place that you didn't have any form of knowledge or relationship with, and develop a building of that relationship so that you then could have a conversation with that person and understand what it is that they were going through, learn their culture, learn what their experiences are. We have that opportunity to do that right now extremely well, with everything with a sense of caution. But, on the internet, to the point of like who it is that we're listening to, making sure that our algorithms are diversified so that we are hearing a lot of perspectives and getting that from the folks that are not just entertaining us through technology, but also telling the stories, their own personal stories, because those are the true stories. Even if a story has been told to somebody who reports on it, that reporter and the way that production is going to happen is going to direct what that narrative sounds like. But there's opportunity to just check your algorithm for who is speaking about what their personal experiences are, and to learn from that, and then hopefully make connections in that way. And in that way, we have a stronger ability to be organizing in the way that we need to. I'm trying to think about how I want to say this, but be organizing in the way that we need to against the powers that be that are harming what a majority of community survival looks like at this point. And I'm using the words survival because most of us are not getting to the point or in a place where we can thrive. And so looking at how it is that we configure our communication and connection with one another so that we can survive, so we can get back to dreaming about what thriving looks like.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I've said before, when October 7th happened, full disclosure, I did not know
Mhm.
anything about what was happening in Palestine and occupied Palestine. And when I started following people on social media, mostly Instagram, when I started following voices that were on the ground in Gaza, that was how I learned and started to unpack and started to
Mhm.
learn about what was happening in occupied Gaza and how Palestine and how it's been happening for 80 years. And, you know, and then when Iran started happening, when the US
Mhm.
started bombing Iran, I tried to find Iranian voices on my algorithms to start to listen. So yeah, social media, I mean, I know it gets a bad rap, and I know it can be a very toxic environment in certain aspects. But the other beautiful thing about it is that it closes that gap. If you can find the voices of the people, and there are ways to make sure that those people are actually in the countries that you're trying to hear from, because that, you still have to be discerning. You can't just, oh,
Always.
I follow them because they have a Palestinian flag in their name, so they must be from Palestine. No, you have to be discerning. That's where those critical thinking skills come in.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful way to learn about what's actually happening. And then the propaganda machines become supplemental. And if you if
Yes.
you if you develop those muscles to be able to hear that supplemental propaganda, you can filter out what the narrative is. Or you can say, you know what, that sounds like it could be narrative to me, but I'm not sure. Let me go read a book and try to find out if
Yes.
it's, and so it all means homework. So for all of you people of a certain age who are still happy that you don't have homework to do, I'm sorry, but we are living in a day and age where we absolutely have mandatory homework to do
Yes.
every day. And we can't just passively listen to people telling us what the world is about anymore. We have to do the deep dive ourselves.
You have to do the deep
Sorry.
dive. And I'm hoping that our podcast is like offers seeds of information. So it's not just like listening to us about what's going on in the world.
Yeah, we're not
Seeds of
experts. We're
information.
not
And not just about,
experts.
I mean, we're
Mm-mm.
experts in our own existence. So I'm gonna say
Yes,
that, right?
yes,
Like
yes, yes.
if we're
Our own
using
lived experience, yes. But when it comes to the other stuff,
I'm gonna offer that, like, experts in our own experience, but we have so many resources to gather information in
yes,
the way that
yes.
we will be able to resource our minds to be able to think outside of our limits. And then if you're choosing to think in a limited way, just be aware of yourself in that way. I'm
Right,
choosing,
right.
you know,
Awareness is key. I mean,
be aware.
it's okay if you're if
Um,
you're like if you're watching if you like watching those NCIS shows or I call them propaganda shows because that's
yeah,
mostly what they are. They're making the police look so wonderful, and
enforcement or
they're going to
overtaking
save
it.
us all, and it's all propaganda. So
Mhm.
but if you feel like you want to watch it, then just
Yeah.
watch it, but watch it through the lens of knowing that it's propaganda. And with every passing scene, go, interesting. They're painting that cop as being such a hero, but is he really? Did he really do it?
Anything on entertainment is thoroughly unrealistic from what we
Thoroughly, thoroughly, thoroughly,
how we
and has a
experience
narrative
it.
to push. So
So
you gotta be mindful of
yes.
that always. So before we go quickly, do you want to speak into Light Her Way
I
and
do.
just yeah,
To just keep, our one love for Jamaica going. We do have
yes,
the Light Her Way JA initiative, which is a rapid response initiative to get power onto the island, to get solar backpacks. We want to start out with 500 solar backpacks into the hands of women and girls in particular on the
hmm
island, because it's
hmm
specifically vulnerable population on the island with immobility, inability to get to the services that you need for healthcare,
yep,
inability to like actually do the building of homes and things like that, just because it's physically not the same possibility.
right,
And so, an ability to actually be in communication and connection with people to tell folks what their needs are. So we particularly want to put these solar backpacks in the hands of women and girls. And we also know that those are the holders and the keepers of community and culture in Jamaica. And so they'll make sure that everybody else has the resources that they need
right,
as they're continuing the work going along. And so lightherwayja.com, you can visit to support. It is a direct link support. I will continue to give updates as we get to our funding goal, because that's what we need to do. We need to get to our funding goal so that we can get all the materials and transport them over to the island. It's a rapid response because it's an immediate need right now, but it's a longevity of response because it's going to take years for Jamaica to recover from Melissa.
And the the backpack, the solar backpack idea is just brilliant, and it's going to be an ongoing need thing. So, like you said, it's immediate response right now because everyone is in dire need, but this could transform. It will transform women and girls' access to agency and to be able to care for themselves in an ongoing process. So, so for those of you who are listening, I've got the URL up on the screen right now, but for those of you who are listening, lightherwayja.com. So that's lightherwayja.com. Go there, click that support button, give whatever you can, and know that no amount is too little. And let's make sure that that we're able to get these 500 backpacks onto the island and in the hands of women and girls so that we can support them in their recovery efforts. So thank you, Jay, for spearheading that. And we will see you guys next week.
Yes, we will. All right. Bless. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, as you move throughout your day, continue to ask yourself,
Why Do I Give a Fuck is produced in collaboration with Johanna and Deanne. Music by Norwegian musician Water. See you next time.